Ready to dive into the world of green energy?
Yeah.
Great. But buckle up, because we're going way beyond your typical solar panel and EV conversations.
Right.
Yeah, this deep dive is all about the fascinating and honestly sometimes unexpected human stories woven into this global shift.
Yeah, and so often we get so caught up in the technology itself, solar panels, wind turbines, but we forget that this transition to green energy, it's deeply intertwined with history and with culture and with frankly, some seriously complex social dynamics.
Yeah, for sure.
And these narratives, they offer us a much richer understanding, I think, than just reading the headlines.
It's like we're almost conditioned, right? We think electric car, we automatically think clean, good for the planet.
Right.
But those materials, they have to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
And that's where things get really interesting, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. Mining, for instance, I mean, we're talking about digging stuff out of the earth.
Yeah.
It can be inherently disruptive no matter how green the end product is, right?
Right.
And this creates tension. It creates this inherent tension between, our desire for these environmental goals and the impact that mining has on the communities, especially indigenous populations who often live on the land where these resources are located.
It's like, it reminds me of that story about the San Carlos Apache tribe and the Resolution Copper Project, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're being forced to make this impossible choice to protect land that holds like deep cultural and spiritual significance for them, or to potentially benefit from this mine that could, supply copper for the EVs that we see as being, the good guys in this fight against climate change.
Right.
It's a tough situation to be in.
And it's not just happening over there, I think people forget. Remember all those news stories a few years ago about conflict minerals, in our smartphones and our laptops?
Oh, yeah.
These same issues, they're now popping up with the materials that are needed for EV batteries.
Yeah, like cobalt mining in the Congo, which has been linked to, human rights concerns, including child labor.
Exactly.
And now you have automakers like Tesla racing to develop these cobalt-free batteries. But it just highlights how these issues they're embedded in the entire supply chain.
It really underscores the need, I think, for greater transparency, for ethical sourcing practices in this industry that's, often touted as being so clean and green.
It makes you stop and think, right? Like
Yeah.
we all want a greener future. I think we can all agree on that. But it's crucial to ask ourselves, where are these materials coming from?
Yes.
And at what human and environmental cost?
Right.
Ethical sourcing it's not just this feel-good buzzword. It's essential, truly, for a sustainable future. And it's something that we as consumers, we have a right to demand, right? To know where our products are coming from and how they're made.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, it's not just about, where these materials come from. It's also about what happens to the towns and the communities where they're mined.
Right, because these transitions can be, bumpy, to say the least.
Yeah.
You have these booms and busts that reshape communities in ways that most people don't even realize.
Yeah.
And the legacy of past mining booms, which, let's be honest, often environmentally damaging,
Yeah.
adds another layer of complexity to this whole issue.
Like take Ely, Minnesota, for example. This town was built on iron ore. Then it transitioned to tourism. And now there's this company that wants to mine copper nearby, and it's sparked this huge debate. It's a real life example of how the green energy transition is forcing some communities to grapple with their identity and their economic future, like all over again.
And these transitions are rarely linear or predictable, right? It's not always a simple path from, point A to point B.
Right. Oh, for sure. And the stakes are high. Like
Yeah.
look at the Stibnite project in Idaho.
Right.
They're aiming to mine antimony, which is a critical material for a lot of green technologies. But the catch is it's also a super fun site contaminated by, guess what, previous mining.
Of course.
Right. And the company's promising to clean it up. They're saying, this time will be different, but it makes you wonder, can you really just erase the past? Can they really do it right this time?
It's a valid concern. I mean, the history of environmental remediation is complex, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it often involves, very difficult trade-offs.
So even if you don't live in a mining town, this affects all of us, right? Because the ripple effects of these booms and busts, they impact, well, jobs, infrastructure, the cost of the goods that we all rely on. And of course, there's the environmental impact as well. It's all connected.
Absolutely. It really boils down to choices, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we have this urgent need for green technology to combat climate change. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But we also have this responsibility to protect the planet and the people on it in the process. And those two things aren't always aligned, are they?
No.
It's a delicate balancing act, for sure. And often with competing values at play.
It's like walking a tightrope. You see this like playing out in real time with the story of Team's buckwheat, right? This rare flower, it's only found in Nevada, and a proposed lithium mine in the area, that lithium could help power those EVs we were talking about.
Right.
But it would also threaten the flower's very existence.
Yep, tough situation.
So talk about a tough call, right? Like how do you even begin to weigh those competing interests?
Exactly. And it's not just about saving a single flower, although of course biodiversity is incredibly important. It's about recognizing that ecosystems are incredibly interconnected and that the choices we make today, even seemingly small choices, they can have these far-reaching consequences that we might not even be able to fully grasp right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
This case, I think, really underscores the need for careful planning, for stakeholder engagement, and for a deep understanding of the potential long-term impacts of our actions before we just go full steam ahead.
And speaking of stakeholders with differing viewpoints,
these situations, they often highlight the really diverse perspectives you find even within communities themselves,
Right.
Like take the conflict at Thacker Pass, also in Nevada, where there's another lithium mine being planned. You have some indigenous groups who actually support the mine because they see it as a path to economic opportunity, a way to lift their communities up.
Yeah.
But then you have others who are fiercely opposed to it because they want to protect land that they consider sacred, land that's been central to their culture for generations. And it's a stark reminder, I think, that there are no easy answers in this whole transition, and that these decisions can be so difficult, and they can even create these divisions within communities that share this deep connection to the land.
It's like everyone's just trying to navigate this new terrain, right? Trying to figure out what the right decision is, and so often there isn't a clear answer.
Yeah.
But it's not all, doom and gloom, right? I mean, there's incredible innovation happening at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
People they're trying to find like new and better ways to do things, to mine these materials more responsibly, or even to find alternatives altogether, right?
Absolutely. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And as the demand for these critical minerals just like skyrockets, we're seeing some seriously creative solutions emerge,
Yeah.
There are folks out there who see this whole thing not just as a technological challenge, but as an opportunity, a chance to really rewrite the rules and build a better future.
It's like a new generation of pioneers, right?
Exactly.
Driven by this sense of urgency, this sense of purpose.
Exactly. And a great example of that is this company, EnergyX.
Okay.
They're using this innovative new technology to extract lithium from, get this, something called brine.
Brine.
Yeah. And you might be wondering, what in the world is brine?
I'll admit I'm a little curious.
So brine is basically, it's like this super salty water that's found underground, often near these lithium deposits. And what EnergyX has done is they've developed this process that uses these special filters and membranes to extract the lithium from this brine. And this could be huge if it works on a large scale. It could be, potentially much more sustainable than traditional mining, which often requires, digging up these vast areas of land.
So instead of these huge open pit mines, they're filtering lithium out of salty water.
Yeah, essentially.
That's incredible. So where is this even happening?
So there are a few places with potential, but one of the most interesting is the Salton Sea in California.
Okay.
You might have heard of it.
I think so, yeah.
It was once like this really popular vacation spot, back in the day. But over time, agricultural runoff, a bunch of environmental issues, they turned it into, well, kind of a mess.
Yeah, I've seen pictures. Not exactly a postcard these days.
Right, not exactly. But here's the thing, that mess, that's actually full of this lithium-rich brine.
Oh, wow.
And EnergyX, along with a few other companies, they're looking at ways to tap into this resource. It's almost poetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
This place that was once a symbol of environmental damage could be, reborn as this key player in the clean energy revolution.
Talk about turning lemons into lemonade, right? Like, it makes you wonder what other like unexpected solutions are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this moment in time. There's this real sense of possibility, a feeling that we're on the cusp of something truly transformative.
Yeah.
But of course, even with the most innovative technology, we still have to navigate the human side of this whole equation, right?
Because it's not just about the what, right? The technology, the resources. It's also about the who, the people, the communities that are impacted by these decisions.
Right.
And as we've seen, that can get really complicated. Like with that lithium mine at Rhyolite Ridge, the one you mentioned earlier, with Ioneer and the team's buckwheat. Yeah. That's a prime example of just how tricky these situations can get.
Absolutely. That case really it really encapsulates, I think, the challenges, the complexities of trying to balance, economic interests, environmental concerns, community values. All of these things are coming to a head in this one place. And you have Ioneer, this company that's trying to, position itself as a responsible player in the lithium mining industry.
Right.
And they're led by this guy, David Snidman. And he's a former oil and gas executive.
Oh, wow.
Who basically he switched sides. He felt like, this moral imperative to be a part of the clean energy solution.
Yeah. Talk about a career 180.
Right.
Yeah.
But even with the best intentions, they're still dealing with the very real threat that their project poses to this tiny, critically endangered wildflower. I mean, it's a tough spot to be in, no doubt.
Yeah.
And then you have, people like Patrick Donnelly, who's a botanist with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Okay.
And he's dedicated his life to protecting biodiversity, and he's been a very vocal critic of the Rhyolite Ridge project.
Yeah.
He argues that some places they're simply too precious to risk, no matter how carefully you try to mine them.
He's been pretty vocal about that on social media too, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, he's a passionate advocate.
Yeah.
He believes that even if just a single species like Kima's buckwheat goes extinct because of our actions, it's a loss for all of us.
Yeah.
And he's not convinced that Ioneer or frankly any mining company can truly protect the flower while also extracting lithium on a commercial scale.
So you have these two sides, right? Both passionate about the future, both wanting what they believe is best for the planet, but with these drastically different approaches.
Right.
Callaway and Ioneer, they're trying to walk this tightrope, right? Of economic development, environmental protection, while Donnelly is essentially saying, hold on, some things are just too valuable to put at risk.
Right, and it really illustrates that central tension, I think, at the heart of this whole green energy transition, which is how do we weigh the urgent need for these technologies, these green technologies, with the equally urgent need to protect biodiversity, to preserve cultural heritage, to respect the rights of local communities. I mean, these are not easy questions to answer.
No, they're definitely not. And it's a question, that each of us has to grapple with, right? As we navigate this new landscape, and it's not just happening in these far off mining communities. Is it these ripples, these impacts? They're being felt everywhere, even in our own backyards, right?
That's right. Even seemingly mundane things are getting caught up in this green energy revolution.
Yeah.
And a perfect example of that is something you might not expect. The humble leaf blower.
Wait, what? Leaf blowers? Seriously, what do those have to do with any of this?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Okay.
Those gas-powered leaf blowers that you hear, everywhere, especially this time of year.
Oh wait.
They're actually little pollution machines.
Really?
I'm talking air pollutants, noise pollution, the whole shebang.
Wow. I had no idea. I guess I just tuned them out because they're so common.
They're ubiquitous.
Okay.
But they're also a significant source of pollution. You want to hear a crazy statistic?
I'm with it.
Okay, so a study found that running a gas-powered leaf blower for just 30 minutes emits as much pollution as driving a Ford F-150 pickup truck. those big ones.
Yeah.
From Texas to Alaska.
No way. You're kidding. I use one of those things every fall to clean up my yard. I had no idea they were such environmental nightmares.
It's wild, right? And it's why there's this huge push now towards electric leaf blowers.
Okay.
Which, you guessed it, are often powered by lithium-ion batteries.
Right.
So even something as simple as yard work is becoming part of this larger conversation about critical minerals, about responsible sourcing, about the environmental impacts of our everyday choices.
It really makes you stop and think about all the things we take for granted, the things we don't even consider because they've always just been there. It's like we're seeing the world through this whole new lens now.
Yeah.
But shifting back to those communities where these materials are actually mined, we've talked about the potential benefits, the economic opportunities, but what about the other side of the coin? What about the risks?
Right, because it's a classic, cost-benefit analysis,
Yeah.
and it's not always an easy equation to solve.
Yeah.
On the one hand, mining can really breathe new life into struggling rural areas. It can bring much-needed jobs. It can boost the local economy. It can create a sense of hope where it might have been lacking.
That's a powerful thing.
It absolutely is. But on the other hand, if it's not done responsibly, mining can leave this trail of destruction in its wake. We're talking polluted water. We're talking damaged ecosystems, social upheaval. Even conflict over resources.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
And what happens when a community is divided on whether or not to embrace mining? I mean, we saw that with Thacker Pass, but are there other examples of this playing out?
Definitely. There's a case in North Carolina in Gaston County, just outside of Charlotte.
Okay.
And it's a rural community where this company, Piedmont Lithium,
Yeah.
wants to build a lithium mine. And let's just say opinions are divided, to say the least. So you have, some folks in Gaston County who they see this proposed lithium mine as like a golden ticket,
Right.
a chance to bring, much needed jobs back to the region, to revitalize the local economy, to, really put Gaston County on the map, so to speak. But then you have others who are deeply skeptical,
Yeah.
They're worried about the potential impact on their water, on their land, on their way of life,
Right.
It's this microcosm, I think, of the larger debate surrounding this whole green energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
Progress versus preservation, short-term gains versus long-term sustainability.
Yeah. It sounds like a recipe for tension and conflict.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a whole saga. There have been protests. There have been these heated town hall meetings. There have even been lawsuits.
Wow.
Residents, they've been pushing back against what they see as a lack of transparency from the company. This sense that decisions are being made without their full consent or their input.
Right.
Piedmont Lithium, to their credit, they've been trying to address these concerns. They've been holding community meetings. They've been, releasing information about their environmental impact assessments and things like that. But it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
How do you convince a community that's wary of change, that's seen its share of, environmental injustices in the past?
Mm-hmm.
How do you convince them that this time it'll be different?
It speaks to that idea we were discussing earlier about trust,
Yes.
especially when it comes to these kinds of issues. Like if companies want communities to get on board with these projects, they can't just swoop in with promises of jobs and prosperity. They need to build genuine relationships, right? They need to actually listen to those concerns and demonstrate a real commitment to responsible development.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to breed more resentment and more resistance.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just about, extracting resources. It's about respecting the people, the land that provide those resources in the first place, right?
Right.
It's about ensuring that everyone benefits from this transition, not just, a select few.
Right.
And that brings us to another layer of this whole green energy puzzle, which is geopolitics.
Right.
Because it's not just about individual communities or even individual companies.
Right.
It's about countries, right, vying for control, vying for power. in this new landscape.
It's like we're seeing this new kind of global chess match playing out, right?
Yes.
With nations, positioning themselves strategically to control the supply chains of these crucial resources. It's almost like a 21st century gold rush, but instead of panning for nuggets, where we're talking about lithium and cobalt and rare earth elements. It's fascinating and also a little bit daunting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And just like in any high stakes game, there are winners and there are losers. And right now, China, they have a significant advantage. They've been incredibly strategic over the past few decades, investing really heavily in mining and refining capacity, particularly when it comes to rare earth elements, which are absolutely critical for so many things. The magnets in wind turbines, electric vehicles, you name it, they rely on these rare earth elements.
So they're sitting pretty, it sounds like, right now. So what does that mean for the U.S., for other countries that are trying to keep pace with this green energy revolution? Are we playing catch up?
To some extent, yeah, I think we are, because this reliance on another country for such essential resources, it creates a strategic vulnerability.
Right.
If those supply chains were to be disrupted for whatever reason,
right,
it could have this real domino effect on the entire green energy sector.
That's a sobering thought. So what's the alternative? What can be done?
Well, there's a big push now towards diversifying supply chains, right? Finding new sources of these minerals, boosting domestic production where possible.
Right.
The U.S., for example, has significant lithium deposits, but getting them out of the ground in a way that's both economically feasible but also environmentally responsible, well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
It seems like we've come full circle back to that balancing act that we keep talking about.
Right back to it.
But you've touched on something really, really important here. This idea of global cooperation, right? Because ultimately, this transition to a greener future, it's not something that any one country can achieve in isolation.
We're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
It's going to require unprecedented levels of international collaboration, of transparency, and perhaps most importantly, a willingness to share both the benefits and the burdens of this transition equitably.
Right.
Otherwise, we risk, exacerbating existing inequalities and even creating new conflicts over resources.
It's a good reminder that this isn't just about, technology or economics.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah, it's about our shared future on this planet, right? It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that the choices we make today, they're going to have ripple effects for generations to come.
It's about shifting our perspective, I think.
Right.
Moving away from this idea of a zero-sum game where there are winners and there are losers.
Right.
And towards a more collaborative, a more sustainable approach.
So where does that leave us then? We've gone from the hidden costs of clean technology to the boom and bust cycles of these mining towns, from these passionate debates over conservation to the complex geopolitics of critical minerals. It's been quite a journey.
It certainly has, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this green energy transition, it's not a simple swap. It's not a one-for-one replacement of fossil fuels with renewables. It's something much bigger.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental societal transformation. Yeah. It's a process that's going to touch every aspect of our lives, from the cars we drive to the phones in our pockets, from the way we power our homes to the very air we breathe.
It's complex, it's messy, it's full of contradictions and challenges.
For sure.
But it's also full of hope and possibility.
Exactly. And as we've seen, it's a story that's still being written.
Yeah.
And we all have a role to play in shaping its outcome.
So as you continue to explore this fascinating and ever-evolving world of green energy, remember to stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, I think, stay engaged.
Yes.
Because the future, well, it's not something that just happens to us. It's something that we create together.